What you are about to hear might just keep you up tonight. Welcome to Hauntcore Vault. I am the storyteller, and I'll help you fall asleep. If you are new, please subscribe to the channel. Let's dive in the vault.
My friends and I found a 22-year-old girl face down in the mud, both legs broken with compound fractures. She had no cell phone, no water, no food, and nothing to keep her warm. Her friend was dead. A little backstory. My 3 friends and I were hiking in a pretty popular spot in our area. It's a 150-foot waterfall that takes about 45 minutes of uphill hiking to get to. We decided to go bouldering around the bottom of the waterfall. There are various little pools and boulders where the water runs off from the waterfall. This bouldering trail is not on the main trail, and not many hikers ever veer off of the main trail. When we found her, obviously, we called 911 and gave her any supplies we had. Eventually, a helicopter showed up and they flew her to the nearest hospital. Turns out, she was hiking with her friend the night before when they both fell off of the waterfall. Her friend must have gone to get help, but unfortunately died less than 100 yards from where we found the girl. So no one knew she was hurt or that she was even there. It's a miracle she was still alive, and mind-blowing to think what she had gone through when we found her 20 hours later.
So, I was through hiking in Vermont, and I wanted to push myself to get to the next shelter. The guide said it was 5 miles away, but in reality, it seemed double that. Anyway, I found myself caught in the dark, trying to follow the white paint marks on the rocks. The wind was howling, and I was starting to get scared. I missed the shelter, since it had been so long. Eventually, I made it to the shelter, only to find it was packed, along with all the tent sites. So I had to go off the path to find a place to set up. I finally said, "F it," and set up my tent in some area that had enough space. I fell asleep, absolutely terrified the wind would knock a tree or large branch over. Here's the actually scary part. I woke up very early to what sounded like 2 people approaching my tent. I was off the path and away from the shelter. No one should have had a reason for being out there. They walked right up to my tent and stopped, not saying a single word. Then they split up, one going to each side. I had a little 3-inch blade which I pulled out. My food bag was outside, and I knew I couldn't continue without, and I didn't want to die in my tent from someone I couldn't see. So I figured I'd pop my head out and get this over with. I quickly unzipped my tent and said, "Good morning." It wasn't people. It was 2 massive moose. Luckily, they looked young, and instead of turning me into paste, they both took off in opposite directions. I swear I could feel the ground thud as they ran. I was so terrified they might come back, I packed everything up there and started hiking to the next shelter.
I was hiking in the spring one time, north of Yellowstone in Paradise Valley. It was just me and my dog. The plan was to hike a 6-mile out-and-back trail up a canyon to a waterfall. About 2 miles into the trail, my dog started acting weird, like trying to crawl in bushes and going from hiding place to hiding place. I decided, since it was about 15 degrees and starting to get cloudy, that her erratic behavior had to be from a storm rolling in, so we turned around and headed back to the trailhead. My dog continued to act very skittish, with her head constantly moving side to side and her nose constantly twitching, until we were about 1/4 from the parking lot. When we got to the parking lot, 2 guys with large camera setups were gearing up. One of them asked me, "Have you seen any evidence of wolves around? We heard one of the packs moved into this canyon last night." I responded with, "No, but my dog was acting really strange." A few days later, I saw a customer who came into my work regularly, who happened to be a professor that studies large predators. He said some of the pack was most likely paralleling us outside of sight range, and my dog was reacting to that.
Hiked 9 miles into North Paria Canyon in southern Utah. Hiked up the cliff about 600 feet to a nice ledge and set camp, with an incredible view of the canyon below. Behind me, it's another cliff, about 800 feet high, and then a large mesa. The Paria River runs below about a half-mile from my camp. I am in the middle of nowhere, up a cliff on a ledge, and I haven't seen another person for 2 days. It's winter, so by 8:30 p.m., I was a happy backpacker tucked into my bag, staying warm. I must have fallen asleep because at around 1 a.m. I woke up to the sound of footsteps. Now, normally I assume it's just deer or the odd ram just passing through, but they tend to shuttle more so than stomp. The footsteps I heard were distinct and very repetitive and thick-sounding. Thump, 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 thump is all I heard for a good 30 seconds. I said to myself, I must be fucking dreaming. Then out of nowhere, I heard the loudest fucking scream I've ever heard. It was like a banshee screaming, and it was totally directed at me. I immediately grabbed my knife and was prepared for whatever was about to happen. Then, after what seemed like an eternity, but was really about 15 seconds, it completely stopped. And then silence. Just the sound of my heartbeat pounding in my chest. I was too fucking scared to look outside. I just sat there with my knife in hand, wondering, what the fuck just happened? Was I dreaming? Did that really just happen? Who the fuck we even know I'm up here? I laid my head back down and hoped to fuck I could get back to sleep. I was mentally drained and still shivering from the fright. I found out later it was a most likely mountain lion passing through camp. It was probably going down to the river to get a drink. The shuffling of my sleeping pad probably scared it. Fuck me, I've never been so scared in all my life.
There's a wooded park a few miles from our house that we used to hike at every evening after dinner. Its proximity and lovely natural trails made it ideal for our daily exercise. Never had a problem there. We came across wildlife often, raccoons swimming up a creek, deer darting through a misty bog, skittish feral hogs racing away through tall marsh grass, copperhead snakes curled up in the middle of the trail, etc. It made for very interesting evening walks. Never knew what we would see. Well, we definitely never expected to come across 2 men burying something. We heard their voices before we saw them. The path we were on was pretty wide and not too far from a trailhead that led to a busy road. We saw them before they saw us. As we drew closer, my husband and I subconsciously made noise and pretended not to have noticed them. "Hello," I said cordially as we walked past. One of them kept his face averted and his back turned. The other smiled and called out a friendly hi, but his eyes were darting and so watchful it freaked us out. We just kept walking. As soon as we got to a trail that intersected our path, we footed it through to the parking lot and drove away ASAP. Once home, we called police and told them what we saw. We never heard back on any of it, and we've never gone back. I will say that the officer that came out to take the report didn't think anything much of what we saw. He said the guys were probably dumping trash. This was almost 5 years ago, and we can never quite psych ourselves up to go back and investigate.
I was backpacking with a few friends one summer in Point Reyes National Seashore. Our plan was to hike about 8 miles from a campsite we were at to one that was on the beach and spend the night there. Since the weather had been super nice, we decided to start really early so that we could spend the day hanging out on the beach. We left our campsite around 3 a.m. The moon was bright, and there were no clouds, so we left our headlamps off. At one point, we were on a bluff that was covered in tall grass. We were about 10–15 feet from a 90-degree bend in the trail when my friend dropped something. I turned on my headlamp to find what he dropped when I saw a pair of green eyes shining at me from the grass at the bend. For those of you that don't know, if you see green eye shine and the eyes aren't fairly close together, you're looking at a mountain lion. I kept the light on the eyes as we walked past. Because of the way the trail was, we couldn't go too far off the trail, so we passed about 5 feet from the lion. I kept the light on it until we were 100 or so feet away. The whole time, it didn't move. It just watched us. The scariest part to me is that the grass was so thick, we never saw anything other than its eye shine.